Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching POLITIRIXX. Right now we have Soledad, we also have Dean. How you guys doing?
All the right. Happy Valentine's.
Oh yeah, you too.
Awesome. Well, it's been a long week. Let's jump right into it. The first one is the transatlantic...
Trans-Pacific.
Now, you said that this is huge, but yet no one really knows what's going on. Tell us a little bit about it.
The TPP is what we're talking about first, and that is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And honestly, I think this is the single most important political issue of the year that you will probably never hear about in the mainstream media, because there has really been just about zero coverage on any mainstream platform. And basically what it is a trade agreement, a free trade agreement that's been called NAFTA on steroids, because it involves all of the NAFTA countries, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, but then going around the Pacific, you have, it's a total of 11 countries right now. That includes countries like Peru and Chile. On the other side of the world, we got Australia, New Zealand, and in Asia, you have countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, and Japan. Now, contrary to what people think, and we'll get a little bit into why there's a lot of misinformation, mainly because there's been very little information, but at this moment, China is not a part of this. But the way it's been structured, China may enter at a later date. And actually, I believe India has the option to enter too, even though my geography may be off here, but I don't think of India as a Pacific Rim country. But I believe they do have the option to enter along with China at a later date. But right now, it only includes Japan as the major Asian country, and Vietnam and Malaysia and Brunei.
Right. It's 12 countries.
12 now, yeah.
Brunei was the 12th one. You mentioned all the others.
Right.
Like you said, the largest one, of course, missing is China.
Right.
I mean, it's the biggest economy in the. Well, yeah, it is on the Pacific Rim, and they're not in it yet. Again, the trade agreement it's a stated goal here. It says to promote economic growth, support the creation and retention of jobs, enhance innovation, productivity, and competitiveness, raise living standards, reduce poverty, and promote transparency.
And it's not going to do any of those things.
Environmental protections. And it's not, just like every other thing we've heard about, the Patriot Act, the Justice Department. It sounds good, and it's just the opposite of what it does.
Exactly.
All the contention and the criticism about this agreement is the opposite of what the stated goals are.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because there are people on the right and the left that are both pro and con. President Obama has been trying to get this through, and a number of people on both sides tied to big business want it to go through because, and it's, like you said, this is actually going to do the opposite of what they're claiming. They're saying it's going to create all these jobs, but in actuality, last show, we talked about slavery was actually going to open the floodgates for even more outsourcing to even cheaper countries. I mean, we were once talking about outsourcing to China. Now people will be able to easily outsource to Vietnam, where they pay their workers even less. So it's actually going to make things a lot worse for us, not better. And one thing that people need to be aware of, just because this has not been discussed at all in the media either, is if this agreement goes through, they already have another one in the works, which is the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership for the other ocean. So we're going to have three big trading blocks: the Pacific Rim, the Atlantic, and then NAFTA, the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement. So this is going to be a mess.
It really boils down to an undemocratic power grab.
Yeah. And to show people how undemocratic this actually is, it's funny, the name for the agreement in Spanish is Acuerdo Secreto, which literally translates into the secret agreement. And last year, all of this started last year, and nobody heard about it. And it's because, it's funny, the timing was set up so that there was always some other distracting issue that covered, that got attention. But last year they passed fast track, which basically means under fast track that when they go to vote for this, they're not allowed to make copies of the bill. They're not allowed to take it out of the room that it's in, and they only have a very limited time to look at it. How do you vote on something you can't even read?
Right away, just vote no.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what are they trying to hide?
Yeah, it's like, I'm no. Don't even give it to me. I know it. I'm voting no. That's what they should do. I mean,
Absolutely.
We have something like this that, all right, people against it. Talk about the left and the right. You got Rand Paul against it, Bernie Sanders against it,
Yes.
Elizabeth Warren against it, Senator Graham against it. You guys left and right against it.
Right.
And then you got some Republicans pushing for it, and Obama's pushing for it.
Obama's pushing for it.
So, if you, next time you hear Obama say he can't work with the Republicans, that's BS, because he's working with...
I know. Isn't this funny that the one issue that you do have partisan people pushing for is this issue, which is like the worst thing ever.
And the secret negotiations, you see who's privy to seeing this information? Halliburton, Chevron.
Yes. Wait, sorry, you said these are people who want to see this?
Motion pictures? No, they have seen it.
They have, and you know why? It makes sense, because when you mention Halliburton, think about who some of these countries are. Canada and Mexico are big oil producers. Chile is an oil producer.
Sure, no,
Brunei, Malaysia.
It's also talking big-time liberal land, Hollywood, motion pictures.
And that's kind of interesting
Negotiations.
It's kind of interesting that you bring up Hollywood, because it actually is going to have a very dangerous effect on intellectual property, copyrights. And, most people, when they think of copyrights, you might think of songs or whatever, but it's a lot more far-reaching than that. I mean, here in New York, you always see the guys selling the DVDs on the subways. Well, obviously, that's a copyright infringement. Or if you go down to Canal Street, where you can buy just any kind of knockoff everything that you can think of. But think about this. They're also making counterfeit medicines. Counterfeit, so if all of a sudden we could just get any kind of medicine supposedly that's being made in, who knows, Vietnam, Malaysia, and shipped over here, do you know that it's the same quality as the what you would get in an American pharmacy? You don't.
Yeah, and that's actually a lot of issues we just jumped around on that one right there. Japan was against it because they don't want foreign food.
That's a big one.
They don't trust our agricultural rights.
Right. And that's been...
And in fact, U.S. and Japan had to do bilateral agreements outside of this.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And the other argument on that side for the U.S., with Japan and the food, the agriculture side, is the automobile industry. Japan doesn't want to sell American cars in Japan. They're inferior cars to the Japanese.
Right.
That's that element. A good point you said was about the medicine. In Malaysia, they had a big protest because there's a bad AIDS epidemic there, and the price of the medicine is going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
They know.
Yeah. Well, you had Martin Shkreli, the farm bro, trying to charge $750 a pill,
Well, yeah, I guess he knew about this agreement way before a lot of other people did. And in India, the whole thing with them is the patents on the medicine.
Right.
Generic medicine.
And you touched on the issue of food, and this is a real concern. That this is where it really gets into both environmental issues and also health issues of how we're all at risk here. Basically, what this agreement does is it gets rid of the sovereignty of nations. So, like you mentioned, Japan doesn't want our GMO food. Now, at the same time, this is kind of a really sick irony. Monsanto has been selling dioxin to Vietnam, which the sick irony there is that dioxin was was the main ingredient in Agent Orange. So 40 years ago, we sprayed this poor country with Agent Orange, giving cancer to our own servicemen. And, what happened there, their ground and water got totally saturated with it. So you have 40 years later, babies being born with horrible birth defects because of this. And now we're going to get, for instance, rice coming from Vietnam. Well, is that grown in that soil that is already saturated with dioxin? And, we don't know what we're going to be getting. And like you said, there actually have been other kind of side deals and side bills being passed in preparation for this. So like they knew they were going to push this through. And one of them that just passed, the head of the Agriculture Department of the state of Texas was absolutely ecstatic about this. They passed the law removing the requirement to put country of origin labels on food products, including meat. Do you want meat coming from a country where you don't know what the conditions were? And then
I didn't hear you. Who did that again?
That actually just passed. It just passed in Congress. They removed the meat labeling country of origin labeling requirements. And just to really freak you out, and you'll probably never want to eat seafood again after I tell you this, but they found that, for instance, farm-raised fish coming from Asia is often raised on pig feces. Bon appetit, folks. Is that what you want to be eating?
Last year, Obama signed a bill that you can't sue Monsanto.
That's right, the Monsanto Protection Act.
Yeah.
And right now, there's actually the Dark Act that's even trying to push that further. So, this is terrifying. And the reason they want to pass this on this coast is because Europe right now doesn't want our Monsanto food.
Yeah. It's just kind of disturbing because,